I'm Yashas HK, and I am currently studying at Christ University, pursuing my Bachelor of Business Administration, and I am in the 5th semester of my course. Alongside that, I am completing my ACCA degree. My primary interests are in the stock market, and I wish to become a financial advisor in the future. Today, I'm going to be talking about a topic which we all relate to. Irrespective of the field you belong to, you would be needing this economic indication. It is something that you would use in your day-to-day life to see the increase in the costs of services and products. So the topic I'm going to talk about today is inflation. The question is, what is inflation? The definition says inflation is the sustained increase in the price of a basket of selected essential goods or services. When prices rise, the purchasing power of each unit of currency decreases. So basically what this means is it's the rise in prices from year to year because of a lot of phenomena. And when the prices rise, okay, the purchasing power of each unit of currency, okay, your currency. So today, something that you would get for 1 rupee, you would get it for more the next year. Okay? And the opposite of this is deflation. That means that the same amount of currency would give you the power to purchase more goods or pay for a little more amount of service. So who controls the inflation in a country and how do they do it? Okay? So in India, okay, the central banking authority is the Reserve Bank of India. And they control the inflation in the country. And if you ask me how they do it with the supply of currency in a market. Okay. They do this by changing the interest rates in a country. So how I started getting interested in this topic. So my interest began when I was around 10 years old and I was eating masala dosa for breakfast. And that's when my dad told me, when I was your age, I got a masala dosa for 40 paise. So I was so surprised, I was stunned. I was like, 40 paise for a masala dosa. And right now it's almost 40 rupees. So how did the price increase to that extent? So this is how I started researching about this topic. And when I was in 10th grade or something, I came across this phenomena. So there are 3 types of major inflation. The first one is the demand pull effect. Okay. So basically when the demand for a product increases and there's not enough supply in the economy, okay, it is bound for the prices to rise. Okay. So the most recent example I can give you is for the increase in the prices of masks and sanitizers. So a mask that was being sold for around 2 rupees was being sold for around 30 rupees. So there was almost 1000% inflation within a few days. The second type of inflation is the cost pull effect. So every industry is impacted by the cost of raw materials. So when the prices of raw materials increase, the cost of a product increases. Okay. And even when the labor rates increase, okay, automatically the price of the product increases. Otherwise, the businessman cannot keep enough profit margins. The third type of major inflation is called built-in inflation. Built-in inflation is basically like one industry impacts the other. So you might say that the price of crude oil changed. If the price of crude oil changed, it affects the painting industry. Okay. And so every industry is interconnected, due to which there's a built-in inflation across the economy. So the most recent news that came out was that wholesale deflation was at 3.21% in May against 1% inflation in March. Okay. So in May, so what happened is that due to the coronavirus pandemic, okay, there was a deflation against an inflation in March. Due to the lack of demand, nobody wanted to purchase goods, due to which the prices decreased. So the types of indexes used to measure inflation. So the most common is the consumer price index, which is called CPI. So the types of indexes used to measure inflation are consumer price index. So this is one of the most common indexes to measure inflation. So consumer price index means the amount of extra money we will be paying for products as a consumer. It's from the viewpoint of a consumer. Okay. So so every single month, the RBI measures this and they publish it. So this is the central index we use to calculate the change in inflation. So as you can see, in 2019, in March, the inflation was 140.4 and in April it was 141.2. Whereas if you come to 2020 in March, it was 148.6 for March. And you must be wondering why it's empty for April. April was the first month in the past 30 years that the RBI did not measure the inflation. This was due to the lockdown. Wholesale price index concerns more of factory owners, industrialists, in which people looked at the change in price of goods at a level of bulk. So if you're not buying 1 kg of tomatoes, and if you're buying 100 kg of tomatoes to probably make tomato ketchup, okay, that would concern you with wholesale price index. Okay, so wholesale price index usually impacts the consumer price index. Okay, RBI used wholesale price index as an indicator for inflation around 4-5 years ago. In 10 years ago. Okay, in 2009, they switched to consumer price index because the consumers were more concerned with inflation. So the change in inflation, it's measured by the final CPI index value, by the initial CPI index value into 100. So as we saw in the previous example, we could see that the inflation in March 2019 was 142 and the current inflation was 148. So the formula would go like 148 divided by 142 into 100. So you would get inflation on a year-on-year basis. So this is a very interesting case study of inflation. Okay? So many of you might have this question, like you would have read the news saying that India has a huge debt. India has a huge debt. So why can't we just print our own currency and clear off our debts? Well, guess what? A country in Africa tried the same and look at how it impacted them. Zimbabwe was ruled by Robert Mugabe. So what Robert Mugabe did was he thought he could just print his own currency as much as required to clear debts, to finance wars in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay? And he did not even care about inflation. Okay? For years and years, he ignored the economic policy. And in 2008, okay, there was such a huge inflation that on a month-on-month basis, there was an inflation of 79.6 billion%. Okay? And on a year-on-year basis, from November 2008 to November 2009, there was an 89 sextillion% inflation. That was 10 to the power 21. Okay? A loaf of bread in Zimbabwe costed 30 billion Zimbabwean dollars. And an annual salary, right, could not pay, an annual salary of a working employee could not pay for his bus ride home. There was currency, like as you can see on the screen, $100 trillion and $100 billion. So $100 trillion in 2009 was equal to 40 US cents. Can you imagine what would happen if you don't control inflation? It is such an important measure that your country's central banking authority takes a lot of care towards this. It impacts our day-to-day lives. So another question you might be asking is, okay, if inflation is bad, I think it should be zero. Why should inflation even increase? Okay, so you cannot say that inflation is bad altogether, because if inflation does not happen at all, there won't be a rise in the prices of any goods or services, thereby limiting the flow of currency in an economy. So there would not be a rise in the stock markets and your economy will come to a standstill. So you must always seek to balance inflation and deflation. Only when you do that, the country would progress towards the maximum. These are some references to get you started, okay? So you can always refer to Investopedia for the general definitions. It gives you all the definitions in a simplified language. You can always keep checking RBI because they keep updating the inflation rates on a monthly basis. And to track the news of what's happening in the country and every update about the change in prices of anything like vegetables, fruits, milk, pulses, okay? You can always refer to Economic Times, moneycontrol.com and stuff like that. And I think you're all set to go.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and click on the bell button as to not miss out any content. Contact us here.